I would like to acknowledge that this video is being filmed on the traditional lands of the Wurrundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander or First Nations people who may be watching this video today. Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. First up, apologies if I sound a little rough. I've not been well the last couple of days, but we're getting there. This is a Books Beside My Bed video where I wrap up the last 7 days or the last week's worth of reading. So those of you who are very familiar with the series, welcome back, and if you're new, welcome. I'm going to talk about some bookish stats and then I am going to talk about the books that I read. So I have been on holidays this week. So this reading week started on the 18th of September. I read a total of 13 things, 3,412 pages, and my yearly reading total is 447 books. The first book that I read this week was The Killing Code by Ellie Marney. This is her most recent release. This is a young adult mystery type thriller. It's not quite thrillerish, leans more into the mystery side of things. It is also set during World War II at Arlington Hall, where women are working as code breakers. Now, I did film an entirely separate reading vlog for this, which I will leave linked on the screen, so you can definitely go check that out, where I talk about it in more depth. But suffice to say, I really enjoyed this, and fingers crossed I'm going to meet Ellie Marney later this week and get this copy signed. She's one of my favourite Australian young adult writers, and I think she writes very clever crime, mystery, young adult titles. So if you're looking for something like that, this is one to check out. I also read Starf by Kelly Decker. This is a novella and it's the first book in a series, I believe. This was recommended to me by Izzy on my birthday live stream. It is about Nina, who is a screenwriter, and she's at the after party of the release of her first film, and she keeps seeing the lead actor across the room, and she is very attracted to him and has been for the entire process. And as it turns out, he is also attracted to her, and the two have sex at the party, and then they have this whirlwind romance as they try to make their relationship work. I do want to preface this one by saying that at the beginning of this story, Nina does think that he is married. He is not, so it is not a cheating story, so just be aware of that, because I know I got a tiny bit nervous when I started reading it. It also features public sex. There is a lot of these two characters exploring kink together for the first time, and there is some daddy little girl play in there, and normally that doesn't work for me, but it was totally fine in this context. And the one thing that I really loved about this book is that both characters are in their mid to late 30s or older, and I just like seeing that representation, and this was really well done. So it was very short, very engaging, and well worth checking out. I'm very eager for the second book. In the same birthday live, Brie had recommended that I pick up Mariana Zapata, and because she recently dropped When Gracie Met the Grump, which is a superhero romance, that was the one I decided to go with because that's totally up my alley, and I adored this book. I loved it so much. I've pre-ordered a physical copy of it because I really want to have a physical copy of it. This book is basically Superman meets Roswell meets contemporary romance, and I'm living for it. So you have Gracie, who is a woman who is hiding from the rest of the world, and she has been all her life, and all she's been told by her grandparents who raised her is that she needs to keep moving and she can't let people track her down because there are some very bad people after her because of something her parents did when she was very young, and she's trying to keep a low profile. And then one of the world's most recognizable superheroes crash lands in her front yard, beaten and mostly unresponsive except for grunts. And despite her fears of this drawing unwanted attention to her, she nurses him back to health. He's an extremely grumpy person. His superhero persona is the Defender, and we learn his name throughout the story. I won't say it here because it's worth the wait in finding that out. Throughout this process, they both end up kidnapped by the people who are after her. They end up escaping, and the Defender decides that he is going to protect her because she has saved his life, or tried to save his life, multiple times. And this is just the slowest of slow burns, but it was so good, and I was so invested in all of the characters. This is easily a new favorite for me, and I just need more people to write superhero romances for me because that's all I want. Actually, I should have said at the start, this is contemporary sci-fi romance. Obviously there's superheroes and powers and things involved, so there's that. I do want to add some content / trigger warnings in here. There is kidnapping, torture, specifically in the form of waterboarding, that is on page. The heroine deals with some PTSD as the result of her past, but also of being tortured. There is the death of loved ones, absentee parents, and a really tough love grandma, but I loved her because she was scary as all get out, and I would like her book because that would be awesome. I also read Exiles, which is Jane Harper's new book. This is an Australian mystery thriller. It is amazing. And I also got to meet her last week and she signed my book and had a chat to her, and she's so lovely. She also signed the first 2 books in the series for me, which I thought was very sweet of her, especially since I usually freak people out when they see how many tabs I have in their books. So Exiles is the 3rd and final book in the Aaron Falk series. Aaron Falk is an Australian federal police officer who works in the finance division. Even though we don't actually see him in these books, except for the second book, working in that capacity, he is very good at solving mysteries, and once he gets stuck into a problem, he wants to see it through. In this book, Falk is travelling to South Australia on the 1-year anniversary of the disappearance of a woman at a local festival, and this woman is linked to his close friends who live in South Australia, and together he and Reiko, who is one of his friends who we met in the dry, they begin to investigate what might have really happened, because the family don't really think that she just disappeared and drowned in the local river. They think something has happened to her, and as the book progresses we get glimpses into the past and into the present day as they're investigating and they're finding clues. The one thing I loved in this book is there are a lot of kids, there's some very small children, but there are also some teenagers who are determined to find out what happened as well, and it was just so well-rounded. This was a really great conclusion to Falk's story. I was really satisfied with it because this is a character that I love. Again, Jane Harper writes setting really well. South Australia is a massive character in this book. It's wine country. It is gorgeous. It is immersive. And one thing I do want to note is that at the start of the book, the very opening chapter is a baby being found abandoned in a pram in the festival parking lot. This is how they know that the mother has gone missing, but the baby is totally fine. So just be aware of that going into it. Baby's totally fine. Amazing book, and I want to reread it. I want to go back and read it now that I know what happens in it. So that's always a good sign of a mystery thriller book. Then I read the first 3 books in the Eon Warriors series by Anna Hackett, and I'm mentally blanking on who told me to read this in the live. It was someone in the chat, so I will come back and I'll put their name on the screen, and I profusely apologize because I totally forgot to write this down. I just remembered someone told me to read it. This series, and there's more than 3 books. I just read 3 books because they came in a box set on Kindle Unlimited. So this series is a sci-fi romance set in space. We follow 3 sisters who are recruited by their sort of space military to commit crimes to capture the attention of the Eon race, which are a race of superior beings who won't interfere in Earth matters because Earth pissed them off in the past, basically. I mean, what else is new? However, Earth is being attacked by sort of an alien bug race that want to take over the universe and want to use Earth and humans for food. These 3 sisters are basically blackmailed into helping, and all of the plans are stupid and ridiculous, but the stories were fun and enjoyable. And I really loved in the first book, the heroine kidnaps the hero and they crash land on a planet that is a synthetic planet that keeps changing its biome. So it'll shift from being a forest to being a wood to being an ocean to being a desert to being a snow-capped mountain range and all of that, and it was really cool. I really enjoyed this. I'm not sure when I'm going to go back and read the next books in the series, but I will do that at some point. So it was nice to read something else by Anna Hackett that was not a contemporary romantic suspense. I should say that I did film a members vlog that included Exiles, the first Eon book, and also one of the Molly Harper books that I'm about to talk about as a separate members reading vlog. So if you're a member and you haven't seen it, I'll leave it linked on the screen. Then I finished up the Mystic Bayou series. I've been reading and listening to these both as an ebook and also as an audiobook, and I did these last 2 as audio, which is a huge thing for me. I don't normally just do audio. So there is Shifters in the Night, which is a really sweet 40+ romance. Both characters are over 40. It's between a deer shifter and a selkie, and these 2 are just adorably clueless when it comes to each other because they really like each other, and yet they interpret their interactions with other people as them being interested in other people, and so they need to communicate a little bit better. But it was really sweet and I loved it. And then there was A Farewell to Charms, which is the final book in the series, so this was kind of bittersweet. And this one is the relationship between the leader of the League within Mystic Bayou, Alex, and Eva, who was introduced in the previous book, and she is a gnome. So there was some really interesting history and world building that went on around that. And as it turns out, Eva is in hiding from her family and they're trying to track her down in this book. And she also has a hellhound sent after her. So this is like, I don't normally read about hellhounds, and I've read about hellhounds for the last couple of weeks. So that was interesting. But I really liked how this one turned out because I think throughout the series, Alex has been seen as this very stuffy, very on the outskirts of everything else that's going on sort of character. And for him to get his HEA in this book was just really nice. And obviously being the final book, there are a lot of cameos from all of the characters. We see one of the children from one of the couples, and the other couple is about to have their first child, and it's just a nice wrap up to the series, which is just a gorgeous, cozy paranormal romance series with so many different shifters that, you know, it's just lovely. And if you want to dip your toes into paranormal romance, I would start here because it's just so sweet. I also read Growing Up Wiradjuri, Stories from the Wurrundjeri Nation, edited by Dr. Anita Heiss. This is a tiny little book, and it's just a collection of really short recollections from Aboriginal elders about growing up on Wiradjuri country, and it was just great. Like, I love books like this that just give me more insight into that, because that's something that I have to keep working at, something we as a country need to keep working at, and books like this make it accessible, and hopefully we get more of these. Also, this would be perfect to read probably from grade 5 upwards, so it's definitely got a very, very big audience. I also read Hades by Anna Hackett. This is the second book in the Sentinel Security series. It did come out this week, and I just wanted to read it straight away. This is a contemporary romantic suspense story featuring Gabby, who is a CIA analyst who is tasked with dropping off some information to a Sentinel security contractor. And when she hands it over to Matteo Mancini, or Hades, that's his moniker, gunmen open fire in the restaurant where they are, and they end up escaping together. But because she was seen with Matteo, Gabby is then targeted and her family basically sell her out. She has very toxic family members, and Matteo vows to keep her safe, and so they have this sort of forced proximity setting where they have to spend time together, and they have to track down exactly who it is that is after them. And because Matteo used to be Interpol and used to be DIA in Italy, it is most likely someone from the Italian mafia. So this was fun, fast-paced, and I'm really enjoying Anna Hackett's writing, and I'm liking her romantic suspense books, so this ties in after the Norcross security books. Also, lots of cameos from characters from other series, so I definitely need to read more of them. I also read The Gravity of Us by Brittany Cherry. This is a very hard-hitting contemporary romance. It is not for the faint of heart. It does deal with death of parents, it does deal with cancer, it deals with emotional and physical abuse by partners. You have toxic family members and spouses, and like it's a lot. There is also the premature birth of a baby who then spends a lot of time in Nico. It was a lot, but it was so good. So this is one of the traveling books that Brie is sending around, so I was annotating it as I was reading, and I have not read this before, so this was my first read. So our heroine Lucy sort of lived through the death of her mother and then her middle sister's cancer scare, and she stuck with her sister even when her sister's husband left her during the middle of her treatment. And so she and her sister are quite close, and when her sister is better, they open up this flower shop together. Graham is an author, and his father was an author and a horrible, horrible human being. So many things happen in this book that make him a horrible human being. And Graham is the world's biggest grump, and his father has just passed away. So he meets Lucy at the funeral because she's a florist. She's dropped off flowers, and they end up stuck in a room together that only opens from the outside. Then they discover that Graham is married to Lucy and Mari's oldest sister, who has not spoken to them for years, or has not spoken to Lucy for years. Lyric, or she's going by the name Jane with her husband, is heavily pregnant. And we know that Graham and Jane's marriage is mostly a marriage of convenience. There's not real affection between the two of them. It's just very convenient for them to have a partner, and they, you know, weighed it up as a pros and cons sort of thing. But Jane clearly has something against her younger sister, and she and Graham get into a fight, and then she goes into labour 12 weeks early. And so Graham's daughter is born very, very early, spends a lot of time in the hospital. And after a couple of weeks, Jane ups and leaves and goes, no, I'm not staying here and watching my baby die. I'm out of here. And she leaves, and Graham doesn't have any contact with her for basically a year. I feel like I'm talking about this book a lot, but there is so much that's packed into these pages. Graham eventually takes his daughter home. He's raising her on his own. And while he'd been in the hospital, he'd let Lucy know. He'd tracked Lucy down to try and see if she'd heard from Jane, and she hadn't. And that's how she finds out that the baby's been born. And so she spends time in the hospital just being an emotional sounding board for Graham, even though he doesn't communicate his feelings. He doesn't communicate effectively in words, despite being a great writer. And so when he goes home with the baby, instinctively he calls Lucy when he needs help. And so she starts spending time with him and with the baby, and just helping out so that he can work and that she gets to spend time with her niece. And even though there's a growing attraction between them, they never do anything because Graham is still married at this point. And they acknowledge their attraction and they acknowledge that it doesn't look good. I actually really like that. That's probably what sold this entire relationship to me. I won't say more than that because you sort of, otherwise I'd be talking about every major plot point in here. But it was great. It was very heart-wrenching, and there are some horrible, horrible people in here that you just sit there and go, why? Why would you do that? And yeah, so I really enjoyed this. I've got to get it ready to send on to the next person so that they can annotate it and keep it traveling back to Brie. And the final book that I read this week was Dinosaur Sanctuary Volume 1, which is a manga that is about a young woman who has just been hired as a dino keeper at one of Japan's smallest dinosaur sanctuaries. It's run down, it is in desperate need of funding, but the people there really care about the animals that are in their park. So in this world, dinosaurs are found to still be alive. There is some genetic modification for some of the dinosaurs, but for the most part, some of them are naturally born. And it was just really cool. Like, there is a lot of information. The writing team had recruited someone who was an expert in the field, so each chapter ends with a page of factual information about dinosaurs and about something that had happened in the previous chapter, which I thought was really cool. Loved the art style in this. Loved the characters, and just can't wait for volume 2. So thank you very much to Shay, who pointed out and said, Steph, this is one that you'll probably like, because I really did. Alright, so those were all the books that I read in the first week of my holiday break. In the comments, I'd love to know if you have read any of these, or if you're planning on picking any of them up. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave any kind of star emoji. Otherwise, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.